This morning, I really wanted to share my area of expertise in terms of online grooming. And basically, I project managed a project called CESAGRAM for Missing Children Europe at the time. I'm no longer with Missing Children Europe. It was a European funded project based on, the focus of the project really was to enhance the understanding of the process of grooming, and more particularly, how is grooming facilitated by technology? How can it lead to child sexual abuse and missing cases? So what we did really was we developed a survivor study, spoke to 20 survivors of tech assisted grooming, and it was very much a symbiotic project where there was a solid integration of all work packages, because the interviews that we had with the survivors of child sexual abuse or tech assisted child sexual abuse, they actually informed the development of a curriculum that we developed throughout the lifeline of the project. And also, it also was very much informing the development of an online gamified platform called CESAGRAM Veal, and also the AI tool that was developed to detect early prevention. So, we were really the overall overview study of this. Well, the survivor study focus was to understand the knowledge, to understand the knowledge that users had at the time. It was very much, the survivors were all over 18, but a lot of them were only spoke about their experiences that happened just a few years previously. So our role was really, through the interview process, to enhance the knowledge and understanding of tech assisted grooming. As we all know, there is a huge incidence and an increase in grooming online. And what we noticed as well was, it was very much what's been happening, and what I've seen through my other projects with Handicap International and projects that we worked on with Save the Children over the years, and even work that I was doing with Mercy Hands in Syria and Egypt. There's a real prevalence of online grooming. But what we noticed in recent projects and in recent publications that we brought out is that online grooming has taken on a whole new definition and lifeline of its own. So when we're talking about online grooming, and as Andy and I have said on several occasions in our discussions, online grooming should now be a broader term that encompasses human trafficking, that encompasses the sharing of images between peers online, because we have a high increase in a substantial increase in peer-to-peer grooming. And of course, it's no longer that old image that we have of that groomer versus victim. We now, online grooming has to be really understood as, if somebody grooms, they're probably also involved in the sexual extortion of their victims. Their online grooming runs with several other cr- several other crimes. So we've got the human trafficking input, we have the sexual extortion, we have also that sharing between peers, that peers. The online groomers are getting younger and younger, and the younger groomers are less patient than the older groomers. And there's a lot of pressure and manipulation for victims to share information. So what's really important to understand is that there's a lot of inter-offender collaboration between groomers. This is very significant for both law enforcement and child protection professionals. And there's a clear pattern set out by the groomers. The average age of the groomer in this particular CESAGRAM project was 24, but in other projects it has, it can range between 24 and 60. But this particular CESAGRAM project, they were quite young, in their early 20s. So how do groomers groove? They groom. They initiate the contact, but in some instances, we have seen from other sister-funded European Commission projects, we have seen that a lot of offenders, several offenders, can contact the one victim, and it's basically who will get access first. Offenders try to target victims who they think look potentially vulnerable. So, for example, there would be a lot of focus on, how does the victim come across in their social media posts? Are they wearing glasses? Are they alone? They post messages of feeling alone, of feeling that nobody understands them, because a lot of the groomers will have done their background work on their actual victims. So it's a specific targeted victim. So it seems that this inter collaboration between groomers has become more and more prevalent in recent years. So they initiate contact, they develop trust, they show interest, they compliment, they provide the necessary emotional care, very attentive, 24/7 texts in some instances, highlight the similarities. The I word becomes the we word. We love this. We love ice cream. We like the same films on Netflix. We have the same interest. We like the same influencers and music artists. And of course, is this very early, particularly amongst the younger groomers, is to desensitize the victim to sexual content. And this is something that I've seen in all of the projects that I've ever worked on child sexual abuse. It's the introduction or the early introduction of sexual conversations, showing pornography, and often sending nude images of themselves. Sometimes fake nude images of themselves, or maybe they have pumped some nude image from a minor on the internet, or sometimes they actually send images of themselves, whether they're 24, 34, or 54. And coercion plays a huge role within that grooming sphere. If the groomer feels that they are not getting what they want from the victim, they have developed an emotional dependence on behalf of the victim with them. So is that, and they carefully isolate family, friends, and within the school establishment or even outside. So is that when they threaten to break off contact, the victim, many of them younger and younger, the average age for the victims in the recent project that I worked on was 12, but the youngest victim was 8. They are unable to see this emotional manipulation. So they panic when the contact is threatened to be broken off by the groomer. And of course, what's been happening with the younger groomers is that they will threaten to break off the emotional connection, but they will immediately threaten to spread the victim's images throughout their social media networks. So these whole development of trust tactics are very, very carefully thought through, and it's a very conscientious sense of manipulation of the victim by the groomer. Showing interest, valuing the child, caring sentences, how was your day at school, highlighting similarities, and being generous. So the offenders sometimes establish themselves on that friendship level with their victims. And many often it moves very quickly to that romantic type of relationship. Some survivors in various projects that I've been working on has referred to these relationships as digital romantic boyfriend relationships. And of course, the groomers are very, very keen on using what we call that love bombing. I don't like this term. I will only use it once because it is not what it seems to give the impression that it is. It's pure and utter psychological manipulation, often used by narcissistic individuals, whether they're 15 or whether they're 24. And it's basically displaying intense interest, basically blindsiding the victim to such an extent that the victim is no longer in a position to be able to think coherently. And a lot, as we've seen from COVID-19, with the emergence of that COVID-19 pandemic that gripped the world for X number of years, we can see from a lot of various reports by UNICEF, by a lot of NGOs, including NGOs that we've worked with here in Brussels, loneliness has been cited as a primary reason for actually going online in the first place. So the coercion tactic, very cleverly used, deliberately used by the groomer, is often the threat of loss of connection. They put on the emotional pressure on them as well. They offer love, they offer attention. A lot of them offer gifts, whether it's alcohol, drugs, or even online gifts. For example, if they are playing a game online, the groomer could offer even something as inane and as innocuous as a lollipop gift. That's even a virtual gift that isn't even tangible for the victim, but the victim displays that same level of pleasure of receiving a virtual gift, as if they had received the gift offline. So it's the groomer carefully induces a sense of responsibility on the victim in the very early stages. Well, if you hadn't gone online, then we wouldn't have met. Nothing is said about the innocent victim going online, looking for like-minded people, whether they're exploring their sexuality, whether they're looking for new friends out of loneliness. And the groomers subsequently bring the victim into these encrypted chats, whether you're on WhatsApp, TikTok, or whatever social media platform that you're dealing with, particularly Telegram. It's one of the platforms that has a very, very insidious way of maintaining privacy within conversations. So this inducing sense of responsibility, the material coercion, sometimes we've noticed in recent interactions and in a lot of discussions that I've had with my ecosystem peers, is that high instance of peer-to-peer grooming. And as I said earlier on, very quick jumpstart into the coercion tactics, one of them, of course, being that explicit threats. So, love bombing always gains a lot of interest in the sense that, it is psychological manipulation. If you analyze narcissism, and I don't have a lot of time, I only have about 15 minutes left. It's something that maybe we can develop in another webinar, but it's narcissistic behavior, plain and simple, focusing on the fragility and the instability of the victim, and constantly in that self-promoting, self-aggrandizing statements about themselves, and quickly moving to anger, resentment, and aggressive behavior if the victim isn't doing as asked. So it's just basically taking advantage of a victim's romantic expectations and that sense of unity within the group, that I term becoming that we term. And it's very, very interesting. And we really need to consider how the minors or the users on these platforms are younger and younger. Internet Watch Foundation have published recent figures that state that the groomed are becoming younger and younger. They are not capable of being able to identify what is a toxic relationship, what is a non-toxic relationship, how they are being manipulated. They are too young. Even grown adults cannot necessarily identify when they are being subjected to such psychological and emotional manipulation. So, how could we potentially expect those younger and younger users who are supposed to be able to discern what type of behavior this is? So, we really need to get into the education systems. And Andy and I have spoken about this, and to get into training frontline professionals and teachers and the medical profession. We need to educate the youth. And there was a recent publication by Save the Children and they had interviewed a lot of young minors between the ages of 8 and 17. And one of their biggest recommendations was to work with them. There's a lot of good on the internet. To work with the good and to try to use all preventative methodologies and tools to assist the younger generation in how to comprehend the navigation of such complex issues of having online groomers who will use every single manipulative tool they have in the book in order to get what they want. So adults need to be made aware, and this is coming straight from that Save the Children study. So what is the offense? We have contact and non-contact. What we've seen more and more is that the younger generation the users, younger and younger, are sending the actual images themselves. It's creating havoc with the law enforcement because a lot of the images that are sent between users, particularly between that peer-to-peer young groomer versus groomee network, it's being done on a voluntary basis. So going forward, grooming should really encapsulate sexual extortion, image-based sexual abuse, imagery, and human trafficking. Because what we've seen is that there are really three key findings that we've noted, is that there are three types of groomer initiated behavior, grooming consequence behavior, and grooming that can be developed because of various familial challenges. A lot of people are going to use the fact that adverse childhood experiences can push many children to go online to look for friendships within that online digital environment. I really have to emphasize here in the report that we published, the survivor report that we published, that is available online from the CESAGRAM Project. As I said, 65% went online because of loneliness. The majority of our survivors came from homes where you did not have alcohol or substance abuse, and there were no adverse childhood conditions such as divorce or separation. Loneliness was the predominant reason for children going online in the first place. And many of them even reported, many of the survivors said they had happy childhoods, they had positive childhoods. They went to school, they went to play. And I will quote a survivor quote from memory. I used to go to school, go out to the playground with my friends, do homework, run to the store, play sports, and basically live a carefree life. It actually only started with that stupid Facebook thing. So groomer initiated contact is something that our users, our children and minors need to be made aware of. You do not, meeting up with the person. They need to be, and that came through in Save the Children report and in our own report in December 2024. When there's a red flag, we need to really instill within the educational system a solid understanding of what really exhibits red flag behavior. And what it has been really highlighted as from talking to survivors of tech assisted child sexual abuse is that many of them do not report. Many do not report these red flag situations that they encounter online. 1 out of 4 under 17-year-olds will encounter, have all stated in the various reports, in our own report, in the foreign reports, in the International Watch Foundation reports and Save the Children reports, that many of these children are minors or platform users. They actually they are looking for the benefits of what online usage can bring to them. But if there's a red flag, they don't report because they don't know how to report. If they do know how to report, they're not sure if the reports will be taken seriously. Many of our survivors and many of the discussions that I've had with survivors have identified that, well, if I report that, then it's going to be considered really serious. So it's kind of, there seems to be a diminishment of the overall seriousness of online grooming. It is so commonplace amongst all online users of all social media platforms that their reaction is to block or simply ignore. So, as part of the Snapchat campaign, we did a 3 months campaign with Snapchat from July to September 2024. And we had two key messages. It was to report and also break the barriers to report. Because it was quite a successful campaign. We got 80 million reactions. We targeted 11 to 14-year-olds. In actual fact, when we analyzed the demographics and translated the Snapchat campaign into 14 different languages, we actually saw all age groups. Even parents, guardians, everybody was interested in this campaign, in what we had to say. And as Snapchat is one of those strong social media platforms that is regularly used by all age groups, it was very, very successful. But so we really, really need to move forward, identify what the barriers are to disclosure. And many of the survivors and many of the discussions that I've had with survivor groups have cited fear. Admitting it was difficult. Admitting the fact that they were stupid enough to actually report this crime. The problem we have is that when some of our survivors reported, they weren't taken seriously, the report wasn't respected, and of course, this of course created a cycle of mistrust between a lot of the survivor groups that I've spoken to, and a lot of users are afraid to report because they think it's their fault. The groomer has very cleverly induced the feeling of responsibility very early on in their romantic relationship. So their fear of reporting is justified. Many of them are ashamed. Why did this happen to me? Am I stupid? Why did I allow this to happen to me? Even the younger survivors have cited shame as one of the major barriers to disclosure. And of course, the groomer has very cleverly isolated the victim from school friendships, from the family. And of course, many of our survivor voices, or many survivors, have told us that they felt that they'd no one to confide in and that they didn't have an element of trust. And interestingly, what has come out from all of the recent reports, whether it's Save the Children or whether it's our own report in December 2024, children do want to report, particularly to their parents, guardians, and caregivers. There is that usual understanding of adolescent behavior and that conflictual relationship that can exist between adolescents and their parents or caregivers. But we have to really be very clear that and we need to distinguish between typical adolescent behavior, door slamming that we've all been conditioned to understand is normal behavior, and additional behavior that can really, really show that there's something seriously wrong. Signs of abuse, closing them, the adolescent or the minor is closing themselves off from the family. Huge drop in school grade. We are in an AI phase, and is going to become more and more prevalent in our everyday interactions. So we really have to work on a preventative type of approach. We need to put our the minors on guard. We need to warn them. We need to set out a solid, clear roadmap of the red flags that exist for them, because this disbelief system that has permeated our society for so many decades, of when a child indicates that there's child sexual abuse going on online or offline, it's that disbelief system that has prevented, and is one of the biggest barriers to disclosure that we really need to dispel going forward. We need to ensure that our children are protected, and that is brought. This is solidly included within frontline professional training and within the education system curriculum. So many, why do victims actually disclose? In many instances, there's a sharp decline in mental health. The offender, physical, or even threatening to share the threats. Coercion are very much methodologies used by the of groomers, particularly the younger groomers. They move very, very quickly into it in the very early phases, but of course older groomers do use it too, and is basically done out of extreme stress. We have a two situation scenario. You either report and face the consequences and the shame and maybe the anger of parents or guardians, or you will be subjected to manipulative physical and emotional abuse by the groomer. So the signs of abuse need to be broadcast to all parents, guardians, and schools going forward. School performance, expensive gifts, the children running away. Many run away because of the grooming, many run away before the grooming happens and the online grooming develops because of that running away phase, increase in drug or alcohol use, mental abuse. So reactions to disclosure are really important. We need calm reactions. We need our law enforcement to be trained how to react. If the victim is brought in, we need calm reactions. We need recognition that this is abuse. We need to minimize the shame and the blame. And obviously, the victim needs to feel that intervention is going to occur. So, law enforcement, we have the best meaning law enforcement personnel in the world. We have in all professions, we have good and maybe not so good. Many do not report to law enforcement. What happens in many instances is that the cases arrive on the desk of the law enforcement because it's the last resort. I trained 200 lawyers with the for Christmas. I had 8 sessions of 45 minutes. worked with law enforcement, of high-ranking law enforcement from all 27 member states. And they are very, very low enforcement. They definitely want to be involved in the preventative stage of online child sexual abuse. There are a lot of, and Andy can confirm this from the UK perspective, there are a lot of campaigns at a UK law enforcement level that is basically this push to work with taxi drivers, this push to work with civil society. For example, if a young minor gets into a taxi with an older individual and the taxi driver can clearly see that this is a normal situation, the UK police, and you can confirm this, they've set up an alert system whereby they are informed quickly, and of course they can hopefully go in and intervene. The role of the law enforcement when at the end of the abuse is very, very important. But also what I've noticed from the interactions that I've had with the law enforcement, from the projects that I've worked on in the recent past and also in the last few years, law enforcement certainly want to be involved in the early preventative stage, as do parents. The role of parents in the early preventative stage is key. We need to educate parents, carers, and guardians on how to identify and react to the signs of abuse. Parents do not know how to react. We have parents who are growing up in a completely different digital era to their children. Many of them ask their own children how to put on the parental controls on their various devices. This is completely illogical. We need parents to be made aware. We need parents, carers, and guardians to be sensitized, to be educated, so that they feel comfortable and confident to be able to navigate social media online platforms, and so that they can potentially identify signs of abuse. Because once you know what they are, they're very, very clear to identify. And we also need to educate, whether it's the educational system and parents, carers, and caregivers, how to react, how to handle the situation. Because many parents have concern and lack of training. Most parents are not psychologists. Most parents have no psychological training. React through, it could be potentially perceived as anger for the victim, and of course it reduces that desire and ability for the victims to disclose.